Before the world ended, Jake was known as the world's greatest treasure hunter. No matter the age or the location of the object, he was able to find it. His favorite place to look for treasure was underwater, and he enjoyed being his own boss. Unfortunately, a terrible solar flare hit the planet and the world descended into chaos. All electronics were fried and the government disappeared, so warlords started to rule. Soon cities were starving, money was useless, diseases spread, and it became impossible to find medicine or fuel. 6 years after the solar flare, Jake is still working as a treasure hunter in England. He arrives in an old neighborhood, and after observing the area for a while, he enters a hotel and takes the stairs to the penthouse. There's a large bookshelf that he inspects closely until he finds a secret door that hides a room. Jake immediately sets up a bunch of small explosives that force the steel door open. Then he connects his own battery to get some light. There's a keypad on a safe that requires a password, so he looks at the fingerprints on the keys and combines the letters in a notebook until he finds the right word. Once he opens the safe, he finds a collection of old records and plays the one that matches the password. The music opens a second hidden safe and Jake retrieves a very expensive violin. At that moment, a bunch of thugs wearing police uniforms enter the room and demand the violin, but Jake refuses to hand it over and threatens to shoot them. The thugs try to attack him anyway, so Jake opens fire and starts killing them one by one, exchanging a few blows when he needs a moment to recharge. When he runs out of bullets, he throws a blade at a running man's back. The leader takes the blade, only for Jake to give him the finger. This activates an explosive on the blade that kills the leader too. Moments later, Jake enters a huge mansion that has become a factory full of dangerous guards. He hands the violin to the warlord's assistant, and she tells him that King August has another job for him. Jake thinks it's weird for a warlord to call himself king and turns down the offer because it requires crossing the channel. When August hears that Jake turned down the job, he tells his assistant to find an offer he can't refuse. Afterward, Jake goes home, which is a broken boat in the docks. He dodges the traps he set up for strangers and happily feeds his dog. Then Jake goes through the supplies he's received as payment for the job, including a record that he plays while drinking. When he falls asleep, he dreams of sailing a brand new boat around the world. In the morning, Jake's awakened by a noise. He goes outside and finds a soldier caught in one of his traps. The guy says the king has come to meet him, so Jake leaves the boat without helping the soldier down. Inside a warehouse, August is waiting surrounded by dozens of soldiers. He explains he's hired lots of people, but none of them can find things like Jake does. August also shares how he's been working hard to rebuild civilization. Jake is still not interested in the mission, but August makes him listen to him by showing him the reward, a brand new boat. The goal is to retrieve the Mona Lisa, which should be stored in a secret storage facility. Paris was one of the first cities that got attacked, so the government evacuated all its national treasures. August even promises to give Jake all the resources and food he needs, so Jake takes the job. First, he goes to say goodbye to his dog and asks August's assistant to take care of his pet if he doesn't make it back. Later, Jake makes it to the airport and gets worried because the plane they'll be using has bullet holes in it. August shows him a map and tells him what routes to take, letting him know where he'll have to avoid rebels. In the city center, one of August's contacts will find Jake to guide him the rest of the way. Once the Mona Lisa is retrieved, August will drop the equipment for evacuation 3 hours later. In the evening, Jake finally leaves on the plane. The young pilot is confident that everything is working perfectly, but during the flight Jake continues to worry because he sees the guy struggling with the controls. The pilot admits that they'll run out of fuel halfway there, so they need to have their parachutes ready. Jake asks for tips since he never used a parachute before, but the pilot isn't helpful. Eventually, Jake falls asleep and dreams about sailing again. This time there's a woman with him. He's suddenly awakened when the plane shakes and he discovers they're under attack. The pilot is doing his best to dodge all the shots, but he announces they'll have to drop earlier. Once they find a safe spot, Jake jumps out and releases the parachute. He floats down for a while and ends up having a rather painful landing. Afterward, Jake gets moving only to find various fires in the area. To his horror, rebels have been hanged for their actions. Suddenly, a tank bursts through a building and aims the cannon at Jake, but before it can shoot, the tank is hit by a missile. Then a bunch of rebels come out of hiding and throw a grenade inside the tank to kill the soldiers inside. After the rebels leave, Jake finally keeps going. In the city of Amiens, soldiers terrorize the streets under the leadership of the cruel warlord Volkov. He loves to play chess because it teaches him war tactics, and he forces civilians to play with him. When his latest opponent reveals he doesn't know how to play, Volkov shoots him on the spot. His right hand Gornich informs him that an intruder was seen jumping from a plane, so Volkov sends out his men to find him. In the morning, Jake makes it to St. Quentin. Everyone here lives in poverty and in fear of Volkov. Jake checks the back of a car and takes some old clothes to hide his nice ones. On the main square, soldiers are reminding everyone of the rules, which include a strict curfew. Anyone who breaks the rules will be severely punished, and they prove this by shooting 2 rebels. When Jake tries to leave, he finds himself surrounded by soldiers who ask him to drop his bag. He throws it at a man's face and starts fighting the team, trapping a soldier's hand on the car door and smashing another guy's head on the window. A soldier tries to attack him with a knife, but Jake blocks him and stabs him with his own weapon. In just a few seconds everyone's down and Jake gets ready to leave, but another soldier comes out of hiding and gets ready to shoot Jake. However, he suddenly gets his throat sliced by a freedom fighter. It turns out that Drea is August's contact. She's been watching Jake the whole time but didn't help because she wanted to see if he could handle himself since things are going to get more dangerous. The duo moves quickly through the city, trying to stay hidden in crowds. However, a general still notices them. Jake and Drea enter a church and meet Father Samson, who has an important map that was acquired by the recently executed rebels. Samson takes the duo to his garage and shows them the truck he's been working on. On the map, he points at their next destination, and they notice a cipher code on the corner. While Samson gets the truck ready, Drea takes care of Jake's injuries. At that moment the general and his army surround the church and ask everyone to come out. Drea and Jake rush to the truck while Samson goes outside to keep the general distracted. The soldiers don't believe him when he says he's alone and enter the church to search it. Samson pulls out his gun and shoots the general in the arm, only to be immediately killed by the army. Inside, the soldiers find the garage and get distracted by Jake in the truck. Drea jumps on them from behind and proceeds to fight them all, quickly killing them with a mix of shooting and stabbing. The people outside are still firing at Samson so they don't hear the shots. However, when Jake starts the truck, the radio plays loudly and they do hear that. The tank fires its cannon at the church, but luckily the duo bursts through the garage door without issues. The soldiers then open fire, yet their bullets do no damage. Jake takes the truck over a ramp to jump over the tank to escape. The soldiers get on their bikes to chase after them and soon they reach a checkpoint. The guards there also open fire, but since Jake has realized that the truck is bulletproof, he just drives ahead and jumps over the roadblock, forcing the guards to move out of the way. A car with more soldiers appears down the road so Jake is forced to drive into a building. The tank shoots the cannon from afar, but it only hits a random car that lands on the road and makes some of the bikers crash. Jake has to make a sharp turn to avoid an explosion and Drea makes him enter a tunnel. They drive as fast as possible because two bikers are still following them, but when they come out they find another tank waiting. The cannon shoots at them and Jake avoids the attack just in time. The chase continues and soon the duo finds themselves surrounded. Drea throws a grenade to bring down the bikers, however there's still a car after them. The tank opens fire again and Jake makes the truck jump, so the shot ends up hitting their pursuers instead. As the truck enters another area of the facility, a new car with soldiers appears. Then the tank gets ready for another shot, so Jake moves fast to get out of the way and once again their enemies are brought down instead. Now Jake and Drea can finally drive safely to Soili. That night, the heroes stop to take a break. Jake wonders why everyone is so willing to die for a painting, no matter how famous it is. Drea explains that the painting is just an excuse to find the vault before Volkov because it contains lots of weapons that the rebels could use to fight. She knows about Jake's dream so she's made an origami boat for him as a good luck gift. The next day Volkov travels fast to St. Quentin on his train. The general tells him how only 2 rebels defeated the entire team and tries to get a win by mentioning he killed the priest, however Gornich kills him anyway. In Soili, the duo stops at an old building that is supposed to have the vault. Drea is nervous because this area is under the control of the Wraiths, a group of former inmates that became cannibals. They see a flare being shot nearby, which means someone has been following them. The duo rushes inside and finds blood on the walls, not to mention that the vault is open and empty. The smell on the hinges indicates that a door was blown off recently. Since there's no damage inside the vault, Jake concludes that they got everything out and moved it to a more secure location. Outside, the Wraiths are quickly approaching. The duo continues to search the building and finds lots of bullet casings on the next floor. There's damage on the walls and Jake guesses the defenders held up there. They enter the main office and look for records of an evacuation. Inside a cabinet, Jake finds a fake wall and a notebook hidden behind it. Drea translates the French notes and gets the coordinates they need, but Jake is suspicious. He thinks that the people protecting the treasure wouldn't leave the location for anyone to find. Using the cipher from the map, Jake tries to decode the coordinates to get the real location. At that moment the Wraiths burst into the building. Drea wants to go but Jake keeps working until he finally gets the name Simserhof, which Drea explains is a fort while locating it on the map. The Wraiths are rushing up the stairs, so the duo leaves by climbing out the window. Jake left a grenade on the doorknob, so when the Wraiths open the door they're immediately brought down by the explosion. Back on the truck, Drea calls the rebels and tells them to meet them at Simserhof. Moments later the train arrives at Soili and Volkov sees the tire marks left by the truck. Gornich finds the notebook with the coordinates, but Volkov doesn't fall for it and uses a UV light to reveal Drea's fingerprints on the map. Now he knows he must go to Simserhof too. The Wraith that shot the flare is still alive and Volkov thanks him for the intel by shooting him. Eventually the heroes arrive at Simserhof and Drea has to cut a chain to open the gate. When they reach the main building, Jake gets suspicious because there's no security. Inside some machines are still running, so Jake assumes there are solar panels. Drea looks at the blueprints and discovers that the humming they hear is an air filtration system for the vault, which appears to be sealed. Jake checks the blueprints too and makes a plan to go through a shaft in the air duct, although there's a fan in the middle. Drea agrees to look for the solar panels to turn the fan off while Jake moves ahead. On the top floor, Jake finds some rope and ties it to a valve. Then he cuts his bag to create a harness that he ties to the rope. Now he can start climbing down the shaft. He can see the spinning fan at the bottom, so he has to be careful. Unfortunately, the friction on the rope is causing it to slowly break. At the same time, Drea reaches the area with the solar panels and opens fire, but she misses her first shot. Thankfully, her second shot lands and the panels go down as Jake falls, so the fan is stopped just in time. After a rough landing, Jake checks the air duct and discovers it's flooded. He takes a deep breath and dives in to swim as fast as possible. He quickly makes it to the hatch, only to find it locked. Jake desperately starts pushing and manages to force it open just in time to avoid drowning. Now Jake can finally enter the vault and open the door from inside so Drea can come in too. The Mona Lisa turns out to be a nuclear bomb with the famous painting drawn on it, and Jake is shocked, but Drea already knew. August didn't tell Jake because he wouldn't have helped them, which Jake confirms. Drea explains that when the USA bombed Japan, it saved an extra bomb for Moscow just in case. She assures Jake that August doesn't want to use the bomb, he just wants to keep it away from warlords like Volkov. Jake thinks none of the warlords can be trusted, not even August, and believes there's no point in fighting because the warlords always win in the end. As the rebels arrive to help Drea move the bomb, Jake drives away in the truck. Seconds later, the train arrives at Simserhof and the soldiers open fire. The rebels try to defend themselves, but the soldiers quickly bring them all down. Goranich even shoots a missile that blows up the rebels' truck. Then Volkov is given the safety key while the bomb is carried to the train. Meanwhile, Jake takes a break and stares at the little origami boat, which changes his mind. He drives back to the fort and finds all the bodies, but thankfully Drea is safe inside the building. He bandages her leg injury while she apologizes for her attitude, saying he was right and there's no point in fighting anymore. However, Jake thinks they can stop Volkov by taking down the train. They gather some explosives and Jake makes a special setup before they leave in the truck. The fort blows up behind them. In the evening, the train has to slow down because of low visibility. Volkov isn't happy about this and shoots the conductor in the head, so the train starts moving faster. At the same time, the heroes drive on the bridge, and when the train passes by, Jake jumps on it. He then opens a door and throws a grenade to kill a bunch of guards. There are still a few survivors, so Jake rushes in to fight them hand to hand. He steals a gun from them and opens fire as well. Soon Goranich joins the fight too, and Jake has to put more effort because he's stronger than random thugs. Goranich kicks Jake out of the car, making him land dangerously close to the bomb, only for Jake to hit him in the groin. The fight continues until Volkov shows up to open fire, and Jake uses Goranich as a shield. Then he rushes back inside to tackle Volkov, and the men start exchanging blows all over the room. Eventually Jake pushes Volkov on the table and stabs his hand with a compass before taking the safety key. Meanwhile, Drea drives ahead and reaches the following bridge, where she sets up the explosives. They soon blow up and destroy the bridge before the train can cross it. Jake immediately leaves the car and Volkov rushes to the controls to try to stop the train, but it's too late. Volkov can only watch as the train plunges into the abyss, exploding several times as it rolls down the gorge. Nearby, Drea cries because she thinks Jake is dead too, but he surprises her from behind and they hug. Sometime later in England, Jake gives the safety key to August and explains that the bomb is at the bottom of the gorge. Only the K can detonate it, but August still wants to retrieve it just in case. Jake refuses to accept any more missions and leaves on his new boat. Drea joins him and they kiss while they go out to sail the world together. In the meantime, August puts the safety key in his own vault, revealing he's had the real Mona Lisa all along. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.